Welcome back to my channel. My name is Ashley and I'm here to talk about books. In today's video, I wanted to go over some books that I feel would make amazing movie adaptations and that I would love to see on the big screen. There was a book that I read recently this year that really sparked my inspiration for making this video, so that one will be included, but it will actually be the last book that I talk about. One of my favorite things to do is to read a book and then watch the movie or show adaptation that comes after it. I really enjoy seeing how everything that I read and everything that was in my head in the movie that I was watching is portrayed on the screen and how it differs from what I saw. Even if I know that the movie's gonna be bad, sometimes I'll still watch it just because I liked the book so much. In today's video, I will have 10 books to talk about with you guys that I think would make fantastic movie or show adaptations, but for the sake of simplicity, we're just going to say movie. These are in no particular order except for the very last one being the one that I am most passionate about. And with that being said, we'll just go ahead and start with book number 10. So the first one that I have for you guys is Falling by Tj Newman. This book is pretty straightforward. It's actually a thriller, but the plot is just very simple and to the point, and you can already go into it like just having read the very short synopsis, which is something that I appreciate a lot, and know what you're getting yourself into. This one has a commercial flight that has about 143 passengers on it. I think that might be the number. And then it also has a pilot who has just gotten word that his family is being held hostage, and the only way for him to save their lives is to crash the plane. This book is so action-packed, and it's just really easy to pick up and read through in its entirety. It's one of those ones that you can finish in 1 to 2 sittings just because there's so much happening. I felt like the whole time that I was reading this book that I was watching a thriller movie, and it's very reminiscent of some movies that I feel like I've seen in the 2000s, which is where a lot of airplane like thriller horror I feel like came from. Specifically, I'm thinking of Snakes on a Plane, even though there's no snakes in this book. This book does not have to do with that. But this is just like what and like Final Destination. Even though there's no like snakes or, you know, magic, paranormal type things going on here, this one has a very realistic scenario where this pilot has to choose between the lives of 143 people or his family. And it's very hard when you put yourself into that situation, thinking like, what choice is he gonna make? And it just keeps you glued to the book the entire time because you have to find out. I also loved that we get so many different perspectives. We get the perspective of the pilot, and then we get what the perspective of what's happening at home with his family, and then we also get my favorite, which was the flight attendants, because there's just this sense of unity while you know that like this disaster is about to happen one way or another. Everybody's trying to band together to make it best case scenario and to make it to where nobody has to die. Like maybe they can find some kind of loophole or something, and that is just something that I found really admirable about this book. So I feel like this one would make a really fun popcorn movie. Coming in at number 9, we have The Last One by Olde. Our main character Kaz is going on a cruise with her boyfriend Pete, and their first night is absolutely fantastic. They drink, they dance, they have a really good time, and it is the most perfect start to their vacation. But the next morning, Kaz wakes up and it appears she's the only one left on the ship. There is no sign of any other person on the ship, including the crewmates. This ship that she's on is just sailing in the middle of the ocean, and she is the only one on it. If you guys have not been spoiled for this book already, I would completely avoid looking into it because there is a major twist about halfway through, that completely just flips this entire story on its head. It has you questioning everything that you thought you knew about this plot. I feel like the reading experience would not be the same if that twist had been spoiled for you. So definitely avoid spoilers. The thing that I really did like about this and that I feel like would make a great movie is that there was a lot of really beautiful visuals that I had in my head with the descriptions of like the ocean, and at nighttime things that I didn't even think about, how the ship would probably lose power at some point. And so it's completely dark. There is no light. She's in complete darkness, and all you can see is like the night sky and the stars, and it's kind of terrifying to think about because, I mean, we all know what happened at the Titanic, right? Like, imagine being the only person on the Titanic. That would be where my mind would go. But yeah, I don't want to go too much farther into this one. If you've read it, you know why I think it would be really good on film. And if you haven't read it yet, I suggest that you do. And especially if they end up turning this into a movie, I suggest you read the book first. Number 8 is a book that I haven't read in a very long time, but it still stands out to me as a book that had some very interesting visuals in it, and that is The Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher. This book follows Kara, who is newly divorced, and she is moving back home to live with her uncle. Her uncle is going away for a little while, and he owns an oddities shop, so she is going to be left behind to run the oddity shop while he's out. While she's at the shop by herself, she uncovers a mysterious portal that leads to another dimension where there are these eerie creatures and these really creepy, haunting things going on. This is not a spoiler because it's said on the back of the book, but these creatures that are in this other dimension, they grow stronger based off of fear. So if you're scared of them, it only makes them stronger. And that is really creepy because how can you not be scared? I would be. She also reconnects with one of her old friends named Simon, who works at the coffee shop down the street. So her and Simon go explore this universe that is in this portal and kind of uncover what it's about and like what's going on here. This book is super unique, and some of the descriptions were done so well that I could actually picture them in my head. And there were parts where I had to stop and like read a passage to my husband and be like, doesn't that sound so cool? Like the imagery in my head of that, and it was actually creeping me out. And then I would, you know, take a break from reading the book or something because I had to go somewhere, and all I would be thinking about was like, I have to get back to that. Like the visuals in this are very different from other things that I've seen. I was absolutely like blown away, and still I think I've read this book like 3 or 4 years ago, and I still think about it, and I still think about some of the creatures that are in this book. So I feel like this would be really good on film. This next one is kind of a bit older, but I've seen it resurface recently on like TikTok and stuff, and I actually remembered that I had it, and I was like, oh yeah, I think I need to reread that soon. It's also translated from Dutch, and the author's name, I am so sorry if I mispronounce it, I'm gonna try really hard, but we have Hex by Thomas Olde Heuvelt. This book takes place in a small town called Black Spring that is haunted by a 350-year-old witch whose eyes and mouth is sewn shut. This witch wanders the town at free will, and the people who live here have grown up with her, so they're pretty much just used to her being around. There are a lot of protocols set in place as to not disturb her because she does have some type of power, a curse that she's put over this town. Anybody who is born here cannot leave. Anybody who moves here has to stay forever, and if you leave, you can leave for short periods of time, but the longer that you're away, the stronger this urge grows to want to end your life. And the only way to get that to stop is to go back to Black Spring. They try to keep it just to themselves and not let it get out to the media, not let people find out what's happening here, because they just want her to wander and do what she's going to do, and for it not to affect anybody else. That is until a group of teenagers decides that they need to blow this up. So they decide to go viral with it on the internet and tell everybody what's going on. And that's when all hell breaks loose. This one is very interesting in that it is a different spin on the whole like witch haunting trope, because there's a lot of technology influence in this one. Like you'll see a lot of witch movies and stuff will be kind of set back in time, a long time ago. There's not a lot of like internet and things like that. Whereas in this one, you get talk about like phones and GoPros and internet access and things that you don't typically see with this type of trope. So I found that to be very interesting. It was something fresh and new to bring to this idea. While there are some very creepy things in this, like this witch would just stand at the end of these kids' beds for like days on end, and you know, stuff that's nightmare inducing for most people. I think the thing that really was like the most disturbing part of this book was how these people treated this witch. And like, she's obviously suffering. She's got her eyes and her mouth sewn shut, and she's just endlessly wandering for 350 years. She had a story and she had a reason for why she exists this way, and it is just completely looked over, and people just treat her like an absolute pest. And, you know, they abuse her and they do all these horrible things to her that you definitely should look up trigger warnings on if you're sensitive to that kind of stuff. But yeah, I really did like this book, and I think it would make a fantastic movie adaptation, because I definitely feel like it's got a message that it's trying to send about how we treat each other, and like having empathy for other people even if you can't relate to them. This next one is a book that I actually read last month. It was my TBR jar prompt, and I actually forgot I still had it. I guess I haven't returned it to the library yet, so I get to show it to you guys. But that book is Hidden Pictures by Jason Rekulak. Mallory is a year sober, and she's looking for a new start in life. So with the help of her sponsor, she lands a job working as a live-in nanny for this well-off family, and she takes care of their 5-year-old son, Teddy. All is well, and she finds herself settling in. She's connecting with this family, especially sweet little Teddy. She's loving Teddy, and he is quite the artist, so he likes to draw. At first, they're just like, you know, your standard kids drawings of like animals and fun and playing. And then they start becoming darker and more stylistic, to where she becomes pretty suspicious, because she's like, okay, it's one thing for him to draw creepy stuff, but now these drawings are like not even possible for a 5-year-old to do. She's trying to bring it up to his parents and say like, I'm a little bit concerned, some weird stuff is happening. But his parents are like, we don't talk about spirits, like we don't believe in any of that stuff. We're strictly science-based. And Teddy just has a wild imagination. So she starts to get insecure, thinking like, oh, they're gonna think that I'm on drugs again. So Mallory suspects that these drawings aren't just Teddy being creative and artistic. She thinks that there's something more going on here, and that since she can't bring it up anymore, she's just going to investigate it on her own and uncover the truth by herself. If you didn't know about this book already, because I'm sure you guys have probably seen it all over social media, but one of the things that I really like about it is that the drawings that Teddy's doing are actually in the book. So like, this is how they start out. They're just like some cute little fun drawings, and then as they go on, and I won't go too far because I don't want to give any spoilers, there's like this one where it just gets a little bit creepier, and then it keeps on spiraling from there. I really do enjoy a creepy kid nanny trope. There was a couple twists at the end that I totally did not predict, and I feel like if they were just done a little bit differently, it could be seen as a movie There was some controversy surrounding that, and I feel like if that was on screen, it would probably be even worse. But if they just kind of switched it up a tiny bit so that it's a bit of a different story, then I think this would be a really good movie adaptation. So number 5, I have talked about so much on my channel, so I'm sorry if this is sounding a little bit repetitive, but I could not make this video without talking about Mary by Nat Cassidy. If you haven't heard about this book, we are following a character named Mary, who is a middle-aged woman going through perimenopause. She's seeing doctors for it because she doesn't think that her symptoms are normal and that something is seriously wrong with her, but the doctors just keep saying, oh, it's textbook, you're getting hot flashes, you have body aches, you have anxiety. But Mary also can't look at another woman around her age without seeing their face decomposing. She can't even look at herself in the mirror without that happening. And it leads her to the point of passing out. And the doctors are just like, yeah, it's normal. Mary gets let go from her job at the bookstore. She can no longer afford her little New York apartment by herself. And then her aunt, who she does not have the greatest relationship with, calls her and says, I'm dying, I need somebody to take care of me, so you need to move back to Arizona and take care of your good old aunt. Mary doesn't really want to do this, but she doesn't have a lot of choice, especially since Aunt Nadine is the one that raised her. She kind of feels obligated, even though they don't really get along. She doesn't like her, so she decides, what the heck, I'll do it. I just, had my life uprooted. When she gets to Arizona, things get even worse. She starts having even more horrific visions. She starts to hear these voices telling her to do these unspeakable acts, and she feels like she's just losing her mind. And then we have this side plot where there was a serial killer who lived in her town in Arizona that would target middle-aged women and horribly disfigure their faces, and he would leave them with pillowcases over their heads. So as you can imagine, these two storylines do end up crashing into one another and things get chaotic. This book is extremely memorable to me, and it stood out as something very different than a lot of the other books that I've read. Some of the scenes that were like spooky ooky have really stuck with me and gave me like chills reading them. It reminded me a lot of some of my favorite rewatchable movies like The Shining and Hereditary, some stuff like that. I also like that this horror is from the perspective of a middle-aged woman, because a lot of the like horror films and stuff that you see nowadays follow like young, prettier people, so it's more eye-catching for the viewer, whereas this one is pretty realistic in some places. And a lot of the issues that Mary is facing in this book can be like either outright calling out, or can be used as a metaphor for a lot of the medical issues that women face in today's world. If this one was a movie, I definitely could see myself owning it and rewatching it all the time. Next, we have We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kliewer. If you guys haven't already heard about this one, I can give you a little bit of a breakdown. Charlie and Eve flip houses and are currently staying at their most recently purchased fixer-upper. One day while Charlie is not home, there is a knock on the door, and Eve answers it to find a man on the other side with his family, and the man is telling her, I used to live here, this is the house that I grew up in. If you wouldn't mind, can we please come inside so that I can show my family around the house? And Eve, rightfully so, is a little bit uncomfortable. So she's trying to get a hold of Charlie so that she can say, can you tell them no? Like, can you be the person that tells them no? Because Eve is somewhat of a people pleaser, but Charlie's not able to answer the phone. So Eve inevitably has to tell them no, but she caves in, and they end up coming inside. From there, some inexplicable things start to happen. This family keeps coming up with another reason why they can't leave. They've overstayed their welcome. The events that precede just unravel into a complete catastrophe. Fun fact, if you guys didn't already know, this one started out on a subreddit called Creepypasta, or I think it's called Reddit No Sleep Now. And there's a few of those that I like. One of my favorites right here, Pen Pal by Dathan Auerbach. That one also started on Reddit. One of the things that I really liked about this book that I've seen in movies and enjoyed it there would be the isolated setting, because there's not very many neighbors. They're kind of stuck here, and this house has a very interesting and disturbing history to it that makes these characters feel like they're trapped and they can't leave. Plus, they just bought this house and are flipping it. I feel like this one would translate really well to film. When I think of this on screen, I think of like those really artsy, like interpretive films that I feel like would be similar, would probably be like Midsummer or Hereditary, where you can follow along and you don't have to read too far into it to understand what's going on, but that it is a little bit more interpretive. A24 would do a heck of a job with this movie. The next one is The Troop by Nick Cutter. This one is very outdoorsy. It takes place on an island where these scouts go on an annual like camping trip, and their scoutmaster tries to keep them separated from technology and really get in tune with nature. So they're isolated here on this island and they're supposed to be by themselves. But one night, a sickly man approaches their campsite and he is disturbingly skinny. He's very pale. There's something clearly wrong with him and he is extremely hungry. This book is so disgusting, and when you're reading the body horror scenes, it just feels like you're jumping out of your skin. Like, it's gross. I recently rewatched one of my favorite movies called The Ruins, and that's what made me think of this book, because I feel like the vibes are very similar, and the body horror and the gore, I could definitely see if The Troop was turned into a movie that it would be a lot like that one. I know that The Ruins started out as a book by Scott Smith. I've read the book and I did like the book. It kind of bothered me that there were no chapters in it, but I really love that movie. This one would be so effective as a movie because of the body horror, and like the deaths in this book are just crazy. Everyone who reads this book talks about the turtle scene, and I agree, that is extremely disturbing. I feel like as a movie, this one would be an instant hit and probably an auto buy from me. Coming in at number 2 is another book that started out on Reddit, and that is Stolen Tongues by Felix Blackwell. This book follows a couple who's newly engaged named Felix and Faye, and it's from the perspective of Felix. They are going to stay at Faye's parents' cabin. Shortly into their stay, some horrifying things start happening and they get snowed in, so they become kind of trapped here at this cabin. There is something creepy lurking outside of this cabin at night, and Faye is not only sleep talks, but she is actually talking back to whatever it is outside while she's asleep, and Felix is scared for his life. God, this book is so creepy. Sleepwalking and sleep talking are something in real life and in movies that just creep me out, like sleep paralysis, anything having to do with somebody being unconscious and things happening to them. Like, I'm terrified, especially if it's something like a person's getting themselves into a situation unconsciously that can be potentially very dangerous. I don't want to say too much about this book because it is kind of popular among the horror community. A lot of people have heard of it, but one thing that I do want to say is that I think this would make a really cool like found footage film. I feel like the creepiness and the tension and the atmosphere in this one would do really well as a found footage. last but certainly not least, I have gone on and on about this book that I'm about to talk about, but it is the inspiration behind me making this video today, and that is Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson. This book is about two women named Rosemary and Ash. Rosemary is new to town and she's recently out of a long relationship with a man who cheated on her, and she is just looking to start a new life. She ends up meeting Ash at a farmer's market because Ash has a farm and she sells things at the farmer's market, like her own baked goods and candles and all of the like crafty cottagecore type things. Ro is just completely enamored by this woman. She starts to develop feelings for her, and she doesn't really know how to navigate that since she's never been with a woman before, but Ash has completely stolen her heart. But as their relationship intensifies and they become pretty inseparable, some very disturbing things start to pop up, and then you realize all of the signs that this character has missed all this time. While some of them I did pick up on, a lot of them were a complete shock to me. And I don't want to say too much about this one either because it's very short, but the ending of this book, if you have read this book, the freaking ending, that reminded me so much of horror movies. So much of like classic horror movies that a lot of us really love and appreciate, and some that I actually have on my shelf. I feel like this one would make a absolutely fantastic horror movie. Like, seeing these scenes depicted on screen, that would be wild. But I'm telling you, I was shocked with how much I loved this book. I thought I was gonna like it. I thought that it was going to be really good. With the amount of like romance and cutesy cottagecore type things that were happening in the beginning, I was like, oh, this is kind of cute. Where's the horror at though? And then the horror hit. It went there. So if you haven't read Bloom yet, what are you doing with your life? So there are all 10 of the books that I had to talk with you guys about in this video. If you have any other books that you think would make really good horror or thriller movies specifically, please comment them down below. I am so interested to hear. And of course, I'm always looking for recommendations. So if I haven't read it yet, I probably will. If you liked this video, please don't forget to like, comment if you would like to say anything. And if you have any books that you think would be really good movies, please comment them down below, especially for horror or thriller books, because that is my fave. But that is all from me today. I hope you guys are having a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!